everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And I'm Rich.
And we also have our special guest here, who was here with us last week as well, who is...
Oh, me, Fiona.
That's your cue.
Sorry, I was already thinking about like alternate disguises and things like that. I was in character. Am I even me? You know, do I have any hair underneath my hair?
Any hair under your hair?
It's been a while since we had some fun nicknames and stuff. So, speaking of fun nicknames, we are looking at the best Hitman ever, Brett the Hitman Hart this week. No, we're going to be having to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane with the other Hitman, Agent 47 this week. Rich is going to give us a little bit of a lowdown about his life, and because he seems to be his biographer, because he's played every game, every Hitman game ever, including Hitman Go. So, so Rich's going to do the retro part of it and tell us a little bit of just sort of, you know, about the first few games and a few different disparate feelings on that without any notes. And
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm totally ready for this.
And then we're going to walk it up to a review with a score of Hitman World of Assassination, which has been, I guess, running, if you will, since 2016. Fiona's played through that, and I've been playing through that recently as well. And obviously Rich has played every single minute of...
I was there at the start. I was playing the beta, man. I was playing the beta when they had a really fun mechanic involving slow motion.
Oh, right, okay. Which will be interesting, because I do want to talk about the start and the release of the game and how they released that as well. So, Rich, tell us a little bit more, because I... mocked a strong word. I think I might have mocked you saying that Agent 47 was an iconic character. Remember when we were talking about, was it the...
Oh, like the mascot-y type stuff?
Yeah, well, we did mascot-y stuff, and then we had a conversation when Lara Croft was announced by... who are the BAFTA people? That's them, didn't they? Yeah. And they had... And I think maybe Agent 47 was maybe sort of in the top 10 on that list. And I think I sort of said, oh, is he that iconic? And you said yes. And I understand why now. Because you played the living shit out of him. So,
well, unfortunately, recently I was typing about it and I very nearly typoed it as Hotman. So...
I bet Hotman 47 is a great result.
Oh my god,
There's a reason that all of our adverts have been off recently.
No. I don't think so.
Pepsi Man and Hotman.
So yeah, like I go back quite a long way with Hitman. And the first game I did not get on well with. On the PC, way back when. It was one of those ones that, looking back at it, the ambition definitely outweighed the execution. And there were still the kind of kernels of something good there. But I developed a mild obsession with one mission involving a Chinese restaurant where it kind of basically played out like... one of the scenes from The Godfather where the pistol is stashed in a sort of toilet cistern and he comes out and shooting in the restaurant and all that. And for some weird reason, when I was the right age to join these cultural dots, I was like, hey, this is fun. And I think the bit that kind of got me into the series more long term was definitely Hitman 2. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean... anyone that has listened for any degree of time will know that I am a sucker for a good soundtrack, and I loved that soundtrack. Like, there are a couple of tracks in the first sort of intro and the first mission and all that are just like seared into my very being. I have a CD and all that kind of stuff, so you know it's good. And yeah, some of the missions in that were great. However, it's the kind of game that you try and go back to now, and it definitely doesn't play like you think it played. Okay, right? It's quite stiff, I think, is a good way of putting it. And then you kind of fast forward, and you get versions of, like, kind of updated versions of some of the first missions, kind of wrapped up in a slightly different story and stuff like that, with slightly more polished mechanics and all that. And it's good, but it's not great. And then you get to Blood Money, which was great.
Yeah.
And has some really fun missions in it, and I think was probably, for my money's worth, up until the World of Assassination stuff, like the best realization of what a Hitman game could be.
Okay.
In that it felt kind of. In fact, I was talking to you, Fee, about it the other day when we were comparing notes before this, where it's almost like open world, but the world is very, very small, but very, very deep. And it's all these intricate moving parts, and it's like you are just placed in like this kind of clockwork diorama, and you have to disrupt it. And like that is what you are there for. And obviously you have the fun kind of power trip of being the bad guy, basically, even though like a lot of the time the plot will tell you that you are taking out worse people.
Yeah.
Like in that given moment, you are the person doing terrible things.
Still the murderer.
Yeah. And all this kind of stuff. And there is just something deeply satisfying about observing these environments and these patterns and then picking them apart and seeing the reactions you get from the world to what you're doing or not doing. And there was something about the way it played out in some of Blood Money's more entertaining missions, or at least for me personally, that I found really, really engaging. And I played that to bits. I really did. Because that was one of the first times where I would go in and replay a mission and just approach it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And then a completely different way. And then a slightly different way again. And still enjoy it. And I think you could go from that to a kind of more cinematic experience with Absolution, which I think was an interesting experiment, and they were trying something new. And by this point, you'd probably had one film, maybe two films, kind of set. Yeah. Timothy Oliphant was 47 in one of them.
What happens in the film?
I don't know. I've never seen them. Ironically enough,
People get killed.
but I don't think they're great. From what I've heard,
I liked Timothy Oliphant, but I didn't have him as Agent 47, in any shape or form.
Well,
I've not seen the film.
So, in fact, it was an article I read earlier today. I think it was on Games Radar or something like that, where someone from IOInteractive was basically where they've announced more formally given people a look at the Bond game that they're working on. And they've said, well, it's different because 47 is basically a blank slate. He has no personality, whereas Bond is all personality.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, what? Like, how could anybody make a film out of a guy with no personality?
I was just wondering about you can't answer this question. You just told me you can't answer this question, but
I can listen.
Ask it anyway.
I can listen attentively.
And pose it as a thought experiment. So, in my head, though, the only way you could do a Hitman game that is true to the spirit of the game would be to be less James Bond, and more Johnny English. Because for me,
I mean, it always goes wrong.
Well, for me, the true Hitman experience is thinking you're about to do something really cool and then saying fuck several times.
And improvising.
Yeah.
And improvising in what is probably going to be a hilarious way. Yeah.
Which, funnily enough, brings me nicely to World of Assassination.
Well, welcome.
Nice. So, World of Assassination, for my money's worth, took what Blood Money started, took the ball, ran with it, and then added in that element of, we know people will want to improvise. So like Absolution had some stuff where you could, Blood Money had accidents and things like that, but it was still kind of rigid in what you were doing with them. Whereas World of Assassination started putting more and more objects in the world, so you could distract people with them, you could take people out with them, you could hide people, you could do this, that, the other, and it just gave you more tools and bigger sandboxes to play with that were still really, really intricate and deep. And I think that really lent itself to, okay, I'm going in with a plan. Oh shit, the plan has gone wrong. I must now come up with a different plan, which you add in, by this point, the kind of online functionality and the contracts mode that it kind of cribbed from Absolution and expanded on. And obviously you fast forward, 9 years by this point? 10 years?
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of online content as well, and it's as a sort of the way it's grown and developed has been really, really cool to watch, especially being there at the start and, buying the Hitman 1, Hitman 2, Hitman 3, and then realizing, they really are putting it all into the same game. Yeah. And it just becomes this collection of little sandbox worlds. And then they can take one of these maps, reskin it, retool it, put in some different NPCs, put a different setting around it, a different wrapper, and suddenly it feels completely fresh, even though it's basically not.
So I've got so many questions. You're saying all the right things. So, so first off, let's kind of box this a little bit out of the way. Then, what did you think of the first light 007 reveal from IOInteractive? Then, in terms of, as somebody that's played all the back catalogue of IOInteractive, effectively, apart from, if you've played Kane and Lynch, you've pretty much played the entire...
Yeah, I have. 1 and 2, and Freedom Fighters.
Exactly. You are a stand for IOInteractive.
God, yeah, maybe I am.
And so, what did
Damn you, Hotman!
So what did you think of it? And also the idea around playing the Le Chiffre DLC this week.
Right.
How did you get on with that?
Okay, cool. Lot to unpack there. So the reveal of the kind of the trailer they put out and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of up for it. I think it already feels sufficiently different from Hitman to me, but at the same time it looks like there's elements in there that will feel familiar, but I think it will bring it enough new to the party, to the extent I've already wishlisted it. I'm up for it, I'm ready, let's go, bring it on. I'm actually a little bit excited about it, if I'm being honest.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Good. Okay,
which is rare nowadays. I don't get excited about nothing.
I mean, you could definitely see the cool, sleek Scandinavian jet setting sort of vibe that IOInteractive have imbibed into, into Hitman, Hotman. I can't stop saying it now. And you could just see how they're just going to, whilst completely get Fiona's point in terms of, and what you're saying about sort of the way that a Hitman film is almost like, actually you probably do more of a Johnny English film. But and so it'll be interesting to see if they manage to balance James Bond with all the personality, as you mentioned before, and the Hitman with no personality, and actually make that work with all the gadgets they've got going on.
So what I kind of like, again, about this, I think it was in the same article on Games Radar, was this kind of notion that, 47 is going to be methodical and observational and all that kind of stuff, whereas Bond will just kind of wade in and cause havoc if he needs to.
First.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of nice that they acknowledge that, and I kind of got that from the trailer. I'm up for it. As for the Le Chiffre mission thing that they've added to World of Assassination, I played it through the first time and was a good boy and followed the mission story that it kind of steered you towards, and had a really good time with it. I enjoyed the nods to to Casino Royale and all that kind of stuff. I enjoyed the fact that they also managed to work in some nods to some of the earlier Hitman games.
I noticed them, but obviously they
didn't appreciate them in the same way.
I was like, I can see that.
Whereas I was like, oh, that's nice. I appreciate that. It all went as well as it kind of would have done when you are on that kind of scripted route. And then I went and played it again.
And unscripted the route.
Deliberately avoiding the kind of the guided route that it offered me. And it turned into the classic Johnny English-esque kind of comedy of errors situation where I tried to get someone's invite to get behind the scenes, wasn't able to, and he wandered off, so I just followed him anyway and knocked him out and took all of it. And then had to loop back round to the checkpoint that I'd already gone past to show my invite and get through, and then nip upstairs. And I had this one bit that was kind of indicative of quite a lot of World of Assassination's foibles, so I'm going to just wade in and
go for
outline it.
It's cool.
So the character you're trying to kill is in the middle of a room full of people standing at a table, right? Yes. I walked in, and I was like, right, well, I'm not going to muck about this time. I did all of the poker playing and all of the kind of movie stuff before. I'm just going to shoot him. I'm just going to shoot him.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, where am I going to shoot him from in order to make this happen?
Which window am I going out of?
So I kind of, checked around. It's like, oh, we've got a couple of guards in here and all that kind of stuff. So I nipped out on the balcony, and there was a guard there, facing away from me, kind of out of view of everybody else. I was like, oh, perfect. So I knocked him out, took his suit, which miraculously was exactly my size, went and stood in the doorway, lined up a shot, and shoot the Shifa in the head. Yeah. Everybody started shooting at me, so I just sort of nipped around this wall, changed back into my original suit, and then walked back round the doorway, and everybody was like, fuck me, where's he gone? And like charging round, and I just sort of like holding my rib cage together, like hobbled past them, and they're like, oh, you've got to get out, there's a crazy guy with a gun in here. And I was like, oh yeah. And, hobbling down the stairs and all that, and managed to get out absolutely fine. I only got 2 stars out of 5, but I had a lovely time.
You got 2 stars.
I got 2 stars for that. But it was that kind of thing that I kind of, like we were talking about recently with Oblivion and the jank, and that, like, I'm not a huge fan of the term itself, because it suggests that things are perhaps more broken than they are. But with the Hitman / Hotman games, there is a certain degree of suspension of disbelief that you have to be willing to do in order to kind of invest in what it is presenting. And I kind of love it. I do. Because it's such, like, when it's firing all cylinders for me, it is such a dark, like, pitch black comedy. And when it goes wrong, it is so funny. Like, there's something about, it's almost like Carry On Assassinating, and yeah, there is just, I find something so endearing about all of it, and the fact that it gives you so many tools and so many options and so many missions to do, and so many ways that you can go about these little contracts. What I really liked about the Shifa thing was that it kind of felt like it gave you more social options this time, so you were talking to people a little bit more and things like that, compared to some of them, which I thought was quite a nice touch. Yeah. And I would love to see more of that if they're doing more of these sorts of things in the future.
That guy that beat me at blackjack for my 10 million and just took it, and I was like, oh, that's gone.
Bye.
Fuck.
All that kind of stuff, like, I think is a really great touch, and if they can work more of that in the future, like, let's go, let's do that. And that's before you even get to, like, the sniper missions and stuff like that, where it's basically a shooting gallery, but you're having to, like, shoot corpses to hide them and stuff like that, like, there is a lot. When you take the World of Assassination package as a whole, as it is built up over several years, I think there is a hell of a lot to sink your teeth into. And yeah, I would thoroughly recommend it to anybody that has a slightly warped sense of humour and a love of, like, puzzle boxes almost.
I think you said such. Oh, sorry, go on, Fiona. What were you gonna say?
No, I was going to say that's what I thought when I was trying to figure out what I thought about Hitman to come and talk to you guys about. Was actually, I didn't think I'd like it, even after seeing Richard play it a little bit, because I've never been one for games where your main objective is shoot this person, go stab this guy.
It doesn't rely on twitch reflexes or anything like that,
I've never been interested in, like, your Call of Duty and things like that. And even my Oblivion run recently, where I was trying to do the Assassin's Guild, I couldn't do that on my normal run because it felt like the bad thing to do. But this, when I started playing it, I was like, oh, it's a puzzle game.
Yeah.
Like, it's a puzzle game, and it's got a myriad sliding doors, which I also love, because I also am one of those people who will just reload the save if it didn't go my way. Like, no, I didn't want that. So to be able to go through it again and be like, what if I had done this and tried this outfit and this route, would it have gone very differently?
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, and I can't understand still how they make it all work to be so flexible.
Yeah. What you were saying about it being just a complex diorama, that is in, and using the word open world, which is just bandied about nowadays for video games, that is, it just isn't. It isn't right. That isn't. It is that clockwork sort of thing that, that. Yes, there's so much flexibility, but it is in a complex sort of, in the end, really quite a small environment. Really, but it just works so well that they do that.
Yeah, and like what I think the kind of, to go back to Blood Money. the sort of light bulb moment I had that these games could do that and were doing that was there was one mission where you've got like a hotel that has a casino in it.
Yeah.
And I was not so much like mashing my head against a brick wall or anything like that, but I was kind of not seeing a sensible route. So I was like, okay, fuck it. I know I can get a briefcase from somewhere. I know I've got a bomb. I'm going to see if I can put the bomb in the briefcase, throw the briefcase over a partition, and just blow everybody up. I'm just going to try it. And it worked. It did it. Like, the game was quite happy for me to do that.
Yeah.
I was like, I have just been rewarded for my creativity.
Yes.
And
incredible.
that feels awesome.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to the World of Assassination stuff, and it's like they've just gone, well, yeah, let's just do more of that. And we'll just give everybody the tools, and we will keep giving them tools over 9 years, and they can just wade in and see what they do.
I want to mention this now, because I'm just going to go back just to the start of, how this is developed and things, because I just want to get your take as well, Rich, that you said you would day dot in terms of how this was developed and released initially, and then get Fiona's thoughts, especially around the fact that you've had a pretty, for what we would call in our podcast terms, quite a famous internet moment on Hitman on Kotaku.
I did, yeah.
So, I want to hear about that and getting that posted. But then also, but the reason I want to stop now is just to have you guys have a think while we're talking about your favourite levels and missions, because I think that seems to be, when I looked on like Reddits and things like that, it seems to be a massive talking point about which is your favourite, as Rich puts it, diorama to play in, which is your favourite sandbox to put your feet into, like maybe a top 3 if you can even think about the levels, Google away while we're talking and things, but that is in, because I do think that you, like you said, they do with the elusive targets, for example, which we'll get into a little bit, they can take these levels and adapt them and make them different every single time, and make them feel different, even though you might have played them 1,000 times before. There's always something new to find, whether it's the same missions or doing them a different way or doing it your own way and just blowing shit up. So have a think about that. I'm just going to kind of tee you up a little bit, Rich, then. So 2016 then, going back to a kind of a bit of a soft reboot, really, probably from Absolution, I would say. And this game came out episodically, so it was the 6th game in the franchise. It was apparently IOInteractive released it that way because they're kind of keen to develop it a little bit on the fly, which kind of sounds a little bit like what they expect the player to do as you're playing the game in a way. And they kind of wanted to gather the feedback and also provide an initial low price point. Gameplay wise, obviously we've already started to talk about wax lyrical about it, but also it initially was quite well regarded anyway. But funnily enough, a lot of people didn't like the online live service, the DLC, and it kind of had poor sales. Which is, it's interesting that, like, you think nowadays it's kind of like par for the course for a lot of games to come out to be a live service with DLC, and that just be normal. It's all a bit of a trailblazer in a way.
I think it was, and I was one of those people that didn't like the online thing, and that was purely because it would basically, if you were online and you saved it, you would never be able to access those saves if you went offline, and vice versa, right? So theoretically, right, that's fine. The problem at the start was that the servers never fucking worked. So, like, they would be going down constantly, and like mid-mission, you would suddenly be booted out, or you would suddenly not be able to save, or, all sorts of stuff. Once they cracked that, and it actually fucking stayed online, different story. Yeah. Like, it worked an absolute treat. And I see now why they did it. And at the time, I was skeptical about the kind of episodic release and all that kind of stuff. Again, anybody that's listened to basically anything that I've said will know that I quite like the idea of having, if I've bought a thing, I like to feel like I've bought the whole thing rather than a bit of the thing. I, in the cold light of 2025, accept that is unlikely to ever really be the case. And I guess nowadays, the World of Assassination version of the game is probably the kind of closest thing I play to a live service type experience, really. And it's been kind of gratifying to see it grow. And I have bought the, Hitman 1, Hitman 2, Hitman 3. I bought them all on disc, on PS4 and all that kind of stuff. Sort of carried my saves over each time and realised that I could carry the content through. And then I had this moment of I've got Hitman 3 and it's got the other games in it. I don't need the other discs anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just get rid. And all that kind of stuff. And it was at that point where I was like, have they kind of shot themselves in the foot here? Because suddenly, why would anybody ever buy Hitman 1 second hand anywhere? And then it was probably a little while after that it had the World of Assassination rebranding and kind of became more of a platform, I guess. It's kind of like a Deathfield version of when you had Media Molecule doing Dreams and stuff like that, or I don't know, maybe a bunch of other similar kind of, I guess Fortnite from what I played of it. It was kind of doing a sort of live service platform type thing for various experiences.
Well, you look at the Star Wars thing that they've had out recently, that isn't...
Yeah, and it's almost like the World of Assassination stuff plays more into that. So yes, it was a very rocky start, and especially when you go back a bit further and you have the kind of beta thing, and there was this mechanic where you could kind of slow down time with headshots from a pistol and stuff like that, which I really enjoyed, and I was kind of sad to see that seemingly go. I think it's kind of come back in the form of a couple of perks you could get with a couple of specific weapons.
You're looking at me like that. I'm not good enough to know.
Well, this is the thing.
I never got those.
But I haven't gone...
Maybe that just happened for you because you played so much Hitman.
The point is that there's so many of them now that I haven't gone through them all to see if that is the case. I've just kind of caught little snippets of things when I've been vaguely / sadly Googling what happened to that mechanic, where it seems as though perhaps it does exist in some form still, but it's just been tweaked and kind of repurposed. So yeah, it was. I think it's fair to say it was a little bit of a rocky start. I don't think you compare it to your other kind of great rocky starts that you've had, like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk and stuff like that. I don't think it was anywhere near that bad.
No,
but I could see. Well, I'm glad that it's here we are 9 years later and I'm still playing it. Rather than, we said a goodbye to it in 2017, 2018, whatever.
And that's interesting because it's I'd read as well that Square Enix sort of after this, I don't want to call it a fiasco because it wasn't necessarily, but obviously
I always felt like it was an experiment.
And to have an established franchise with an iconic character as decided by BAFTA, for example, the BAFTA, that's a British American flag for football, BAFTA. To have all that kind of then go right, we're going to try this experimental sort of thing, and then Square Enix kind of went, oh, we're not interested in that because that's bad for sales, so bye bye, and they kind of then effectively sold IOInteractive to themselves in a way. It's like, okay, off you go on your own, and they still worked with other distributors since then, but then you could see IO kind of go, right, we think this is kind of the way we want to go with this platform, as you say, but they kind of coalesced the first game into a game of the year sort of thing, and then Hitman 2 and 3 kind of came out more complete,
more formed
with deluxe versions and DLCs and stuff. So Fiona, just turn over to you then before we get into the game a bit more. So did you decide after seeing Rich play so much of it that you wanted to play it, or because you said it wasn't necessarily your kind of thing really, but when you kind of saw it was a puzzle sort of thing, it was maybe more your bag? That is, when did you adopt and start playing it?
It was a couple of years ago. I think.
Was it during the pandemic? Where I was like, oh, you might enjoy this.
Yeah, and he kept saying that, and eventually I was like, oh,
might enjoy killing some people.
But I think that's what put me off, and I think I really don't like that in games where it's the entire purpose, because it's so hard to ever see yourself as the good guy, and I don't want to go into a game to be the baddie. What's the point in that, Well, yeah. We have this difference
because you can't do it in real life, so you may as well do it to some fucker in the game.
Yeah, but I think when you view the games as like a puzzle, I love that stuff. There's stuff that makes games click for me, and some of it's sometimes about big characters and compelling stories. Sometimes it's about setting things on fire with the click of the fingers, which I wish I could do. But I think there's also a big tick for me is like an intricate mechanic of some kind. So it's not necessarily a puzzle. I had the same thing with Pokemon where I'm like, wait, I get this now. I'm collecting all of these things and categorising them in small boxes. Yes.
Yeah.
The rage.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That's what they wanted me to do.
And I think it was the same thing with this, where it's like, I get it. So I can just be smarter than the system and do this and that and the other, and then I've moved my playing mind chess. And I finally move everything into position and win, and it's great.
Oh, that's the thing, isn't it? It's kind of satisfying to see your plan work.
Yeah.
And, you've come up with this absolutely harebrained scheme, and yet the game is accommodating enough that it's like, we'll see how this plays out. And it actually works.
It's like being in like a Dungeons and Dragons game with a very generous dungeon master.
Yeah, one that will
like,
be
sure,
flexible.
that could work.
And,
roll and see.
Oh, I see that now. Okay, this is why you guys, as in, you're used to that mindset in D&D, for example, and so that transfers really, really well.
Yeah,
actually.
so you kind of bring that element of creativity to it.
It's great.
Which is like, because I
mean,
the game can like steer you towards the kind of mission stories type routes, and give you those breadcrumbs to follow. Or you can come up with something completely doolally.
Cool. So I'll keep that because we're going to head back to that point in a second. So I guess for people that aren't initiated in the world of assassination,
well done for making it this far.
No put down. I just want to kind of discuss the story, if you will, the overarching story of the world of assassination. So you are Agent 47. You're basically the world's best assassin, but no one kind of knows where you turned up from. You join the organisation, the ICA, which I'm sure Rich knows what that means. I don't know, I can't remember now. But and you've got a handler called Diana, who's kind of like a bit of a stern but playful English sort of.
I always think of her as posh Brit Totty.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. So then you get given missions to complete. Basically, obviously you're an assassin, but in the background there's kind of a bit of a complex plot building that. I'm going to be honest. So, please, if don't take this wrong necessarily, but I found very tedious, like the entire way through.
Same thing, because I was trying to remember what it was. I was like, did I care? I really didn't.
No.
Like, I know, I understand that they felt they had to have something to tie all these missions together, but I don't think it mattered. Like, it didn't really matter. I didn't think at all.
No, I don't think so. And I think the overarching plot previously, has gone down some really weird routes, like, he's a clone and all this kind of stuff. So, like, the series has always dabbled with that kind of thing. And I think, for the World of Assassination stuff, the weakest point was that main storyline. It's at its best when it just puts you in a world and is like, you know what? That's the guy you're going after. Go after him. And I think when they realised that they could use the kind of contracts system and all that kind of stuff to get a lot of user-made content and then bring in more of their own stuff, it was very, very easy for them to just keep churning out these little worlds. And that's all I think a lot of people wanted.
Well, that's what I was going to... So that my question then there is, and when I came into the podcast, I was thinking along that route. I was like, the stories, there's nothing much to it and things like that. But is that just the developers getting it out of the way so they can, just get to the stuff that everyone wants, really? Which is just the fun and carnage.
I mean, you fast forward to more recently, you've got like the freelancer mode, the kind of roguelike mode and all that kind of stuff, and then they've announced the co-op thing as well.
Yes.
So I mean, like, it's I think it is exactly that. I think the storyline was the kind of the through thread for that original trilogy to just kind of, well, I mean, perhaps it was there to appease publishers or something. I don't know. But I do wonder if longer term IOInteractive were like, no, we think we can turn this into like a kind of sandbox of death. And, that's the route.
Sounds like something a child can't get out of.
I mean, it's the kind of thing that...
Bad nursery.
I swear I heard this somewhere, and I can't for the life of me remember where I saw it, but I swear it was something that when they were starting to do these bits and bobs, they said that they were inspired by forums online where players would like go into a world, into one of the maps and go like, oh, well, I'm trying to take out this person and I can do it in this time and I'm using this method. And they were just kind of manually sharing these kind of criteria for alternative ways of quote unquote completing the mission. And they were like, well, why don't we just make that so you can do it in the game? And
which goes back to that first point of, you know, that it does feel like they were almost thinking, can we almost develop this game on the fly with feedback of the community?
Yeah, and it feels like better for it, I think.
Yeah. So, Fiona, tell us a little bit about your moment in the sun on Kotaku. What is it called? What's the reel?
Highlight reel.
Highlight reel, thank you. Yeah, you keep on saying, you know about highlight reel? I'm like, no, not really. I don't know. Is it a YouTube thing, my bob? Anyone want to explain better than me?
You just send in a clip of something silly that's happened on one of your playthroughs.
Okay,
and if it's silly enough, they will just stitch it together into a YouTube video.
What happened in your playthrough of that one then?
Was it Sapienza, the sort of Italian one? I think I'd like dressed myself up as a priest, and I was in this chapel, and I'd killed someone, as you do, and I think I'd stuck them in a body bag because there was like a mortuary bit, which I thought was good.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then I was dragging the bag, trying to get it out of the way before some people came in, and then it glitched and got stuck halfway through a door, made this horrible animation of like rocking backwards and forwards very, very quickly, and then I think it exploded.
It basically flew around the room.
And then I... with lightning speed and great reflexes that I will never equal again in any game, I leapt into the nearest coffin, and because the game is great, it just made Agent 47 sort of lie back with his hands over his chest. And then the people walked in the door and did not know what had happened.
Yeah, and
they were confused. They were like, what the fuck's happened here? They weren't like, why is there a dead priest in this coffin? Because I was dead.
Yeah, but didn't they say some kind of like throwaway standard line, like, oh, just another Tuesday, or something like that? That just worked so well as the punchline.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, yeah, like I'm never going to be able to top that.
It was good.
That was worth having on there. So I'm going to use that as a bit of a jumping off point for, like, I kept a little diary for the first sort of, because I do it, just to admit, as you know, as I do on the podcast every single week, I've never played that much Hitman. I played Hitman 2, but I never really got like the sandbox sort of diorama feel that you described, Blood Money, for example. So this was brand new to me. I was very eager to play this, but I was like waiting for it to be like a good price to buy. I think I got it for like £25 digitally for for the World of Assassination, and I was like, right, yeah, taking the plunge on that. That sounds like a great deal. I know that you've played a lot of it, so I was like, let's get on the podcast. So this is kind of like a bit of a diary of the first 4 levels that I played as my first real introduction of Hitman. So this is including and then a little bit about the tutorial. Fiona,
can I just ask before you start, have you done this in what you imagine the voice of Agent 47?
I wish I had not thought about it that far ahead.
That's a shame. Never mind.
It's not that kind of podcast. We're not like that well produced, I'm afraid. But so it's more in the voice of Faz panicking. Tutorial, like, it's just that's a cool little sort of sandbox sort of area. Although I learned that I could drop a coin to lure in a really rich white man in a Panama hat.
And that happens in real life too.
Yeah, I was like, I've got. Is this really a method of kidnap? I don't know. How many coins would I be fooled by in real life? Like, how many coins would it take to sort of drop on the floor?
And that's why you're not a rich white man in a hat, isn't it?
But this is how you also know the game came out originally nearly 10 years ago. Who the fuck's got change on them nowadays?
Just like, and then coins become such a key
rare commodity.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then so the first mission, which is the showstopper in Paris, what an incredible level. I've just got, holy shit, am I bad at this? Set off some random fireworks. I kill a barman with a rubber duck, obviously not a target, and I completed 0 story missions. Just a lot of coins thrown and a messy murder. And then it kind of develops into the World of Tomorrow level in Sapienza, which is a lot of people's like one of the people's favorite levels. Where I was like, so that's how story missions work. So I didn't know, playing for the first mission, that actually you could set actual goals of where to go and people to follow and stuff. So I struggled so fucking much on that Paris level. And I was like, So I was like, now I'm a high-functioning hitman. Sort of.
But that's what's kind of cool about it, because it's an optional thing. But I personally love just, like, prodding at the level and kind of seeing what threads I can pull and what happens where.
Yeah.
But you do have that option of that bit more guidance if you need or want it.
I always think of it as like a good first run at the level.
Yes.
Yeah.
They give you like a good, here's a story, and then the next bit is like, well, you go back in and you make your own story, or you wander a bit further and you hear a different thing unfold. But that's the one that's like your baby steps. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I want something cool and cinematic.
Yeah, I do think that's probably the most sensational part of this game as a whole, is that you say, you just, the option to do that and being able to say, right, okay, I will hold your hand here if you want to, or you can bump into that story mission and it'll just say story mission revealed, and you're like, that is in, and like you say, as you become more confident with it, you feel like you can
You're
get into
rewarded for that kind of exploration.
Yeah. And I know for a fact, for example, when everybody talks about, I say everybody talk about, sorry, when I go on Reddit and read people's comments and things, and a lot of people say, Sapienza's, sort of an S tier level, to see there's so much more of that town to explore that I've not explored yet, because I've just done the one playthrough of the whole game, really. So I'm really keen to go back. But I just carrying on a little bit. So for the next couple of levels, so I said I'm a high functioning hitman, sort of. So popping out of a chest in a bedroom with a lover dressed as a golf coach to blow their brains out. That was quite classy, really. So and then I went, oh wait, no, I've gone shit again. So this is on the Gilded Cage in Marrakesh. I'm throwing pool balls at a general in the middle of a well-guarded army compound and hoping for the best. I got so fucking stuck in that army compound. And when you start getting to the assassinations where it's like, this person is heavily guarded and it's hard to remove them from that area, and there's only a very tight window of right, where are they walking around and getting their routine timed, and then you just juggle some shit together, and all of the, like you said, the best laid plans are there, and then eventually I'm just hiding in a cupboard with a fucking pool ball in my hand and just ready to throw it in. Just like, it's just how has it come to this?
I feel like at this point I do have to ask Faz, are you aware that you can like change costumes and like become his security guard?
Oh yeah.
I ended up dropping a toilet on him.
So that's the thing, isn't it? Because I found the room where you can drop the toilet on him, and I was like, when does he come under the toilet? And then I think
you have to get the guards to badmouth him on the radio.
But this is it, exactly. So you've got to do the story mission beats. But I think I'd fucked that up already somehow. So therefore, I was like, oh, I've just got to take him out somehow. And it's just like
Route 1, pool ball to the back of the head.
And then, the last little bit of diary that I kind of kept was Club 27 Bangkok, because this kind of felt like the perfect concoction of everything I've felt so far. So one assassination went like absolute clockwork. Within seconds, I'd worked it out what to do, followed the story mission, and it was just done. Like, I ended up at a party, killed him with something in a cake, I think it was. And then the other one was a hashed rubber duck lob. Like, basically, I was stood right beside him, just kind of dropped a rubber duck explosive out my pants, right beside them, like to him and the hit and his bodyguard. Neither of them died, so I was like, what the fuck? So I had to go back, just stab him with a pair of scissors in front of 20 people. And just,
I love how you had to go back.
And then I just run off to the docks, and I'm just like, and it's the way that
to a lit rubber duck. That's what they say.
It's the way that like 47 just leaves the area, just like with the music, just like, it looks like the swaggiest person ever. You're like, what have I just done? Like, it is just an absolute smorgasbord of video game genius, and it's
so good.
So much fun.
Like that kind of emergent gameplay thing, where like you feel that you have, like, that is your story, like you have built that. And the only other games that kind of scratch that similar itch for me would quite often be like the Battlefield games and stuff like that. I love it for that sort of lunacy.
Go on, Fiona, sorry.
I was going to say, did you ever do any of the fun endings?
Uh...
When I was playing, I ended up looking at a couple of the... So there's the sensible endings, where you go to a gateway and you'll normally get on a cool vehicle, like you say, you're on like a speedboat or a
Okay.
motorbike or something, or sometimes you're just walking with purpose and the music plays.
Yeah.
There were a few on different levels, but 2 that I did, I think I haven't made one of these up.
About to find out.
Probably haven't, because you probably can do it.
The beautiful... Oh no, I did do it. So I'll tell you why I remember. So there's two that I did because I thought it'd be really funny. One of them is is it Miami, where there's that racing thing, and there's a guy in a flamingo costume.
Yeah.
It's like a mascot. And if you finish the level by exiting at a certain place whilst still dressed as this flamingo, having done a couple of other things, there's a big old nest on a helicopter pad, and you just flap your wings and you just fly off. But we're still with Agent 47's like
Serious.
And then I think the other one I did, which was fucking insane, was this level that is a beautiful paradise, like archipelago, like island. You know, everyone's got these beautiful huts that cost a fortune. I keep looking at in the catalogues, and then I look at the price and I'm like, oh, that's why we don't go there.
Yeah, that's why I don't have the
That's why I've not been to the Bahamas. And, it's all beautiful, beautiful. But lying around this island are several shacks and several inflatable crocodiles. And if you stab every one of these inflatable crocodiles and deflate them, you then get a secret exit option where 47 will just float away on an inflatable crocodile.
Nice, that was good.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And that took a lot of work and was actually, dare I say it, harder than the fucking assassination.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Every time I stabbed or sometimes I had to shoot the crocodile and then people would come running after me. I'd be like, I haven't killed anyone, it was just a crocodile.
That absolutely should be how the game works, though. That is, it should be harder to have the fun.
But that's what I really liked about it, was that it's got you said that 47 doesn't have any character. That's his thing. He's like a blank slate. But I'd argue that the game as a whole has such a fucking strong character and sense of presence and sense of confidence in what it's doing.
Yes, confidence is a good word for it.
Because it has these really fully formed locations, and you know what 47 might or might not. You don't know what he'll do because that's up to you and your insane ideas and your bad judgment. But but you know when you do the thing how he will approach that or deliver it, or and to be able to be that slick, but also to have that level of sly fun hidden away in it for you.
Yeah,
is a really confident game.
Yeah.
Any gripes necessarily that you can think of that you feel with it about it?
I
I've
think
got a couple written down, but
I think for me they're reasonably minor. I mean, one of them's definitely historic because the server issue when it first came out was not great, and the kind of online requirement is also not going to be great for everybody. Of course, it isn't. You can still play it offline, but hardly ideal. I think there are rightfully sort of more recently some kind of questions around some of the monetization and things like that, which I think is fair enough. And I think again, because it's a platform, there's going to be some wrangling around that. I mean, I was looking at it the other day with a view to buying it on my Steam Deck so I could play it handheld, and then had that awful moment of what am I actually buying here? And having to pour through the sort of tables of when you get this version, you get this, but if you get this pack, you also get these things, and there is Jupiter and Ascension and all that kind of stuff. And I got there eventually, but it was still it was kind of weird to know that, when I bought the games as they were coming out and they just kind of got rolled into one gradually and kind of over time coalesced, I kind of hadn't realised that I'd bought into that ecosystem, if you like. So trying to come in new, fresh, I guess is probably a more accurate way of putting it, was kind of weirdly daunting. So I could see why that would also put some people off. And you add in the fact that you have a free version, but to access various missions you kind of need to provide an email address for marketing and all this kind of stuff. I could see why people would have gripes with that. But I think for me those are all reasonably small. I think if I were to give it and it's not even a criticism really, because I think if he moved differently it would be a different game, right? But I can't help but think that were they to do I don't know, a hypothetical World of Assassination 2, let's say, like a few more movement options, maybe, could be beneficial. You know, now I think it is starting to like hit that little tipping point where it's like, actually, it is basically kind of 10 years old. And I think for me, the kind of well, I mean, I'm still a sucker for like Splinter Cell Conviction and how they made Sam Fisher move in that, where it was really, really quick and fluid. And that game was not to everybody's liking. Of course, it wasn't. And I'm not for a second saying that like 47 should suddenly start moving like he's John Wick or something like that. But someone give IOInteractive the John Wick license and make a version of 47 that moves like Sam Fisher in Splinter Cell Conviction, and I think we're onto something. Yeah. Internet.
But it's interesting to see that what they will do with the game engine with James Bond and exactly, because already you can see from the clips that that looks like that is going to be the case,
and I think
as it should be.
I think that's why I'm kind of excited about it, because there is that little part of my brain that's like, oh my god, is this the kind of John Wick Splinter Cell Conviction like mashup that you've been waiting for? And it turns out it was just a young James Bond all along that you needed in your life. Hashtag Hotman.
He is good looking in that. Fiona, have you got any off the top of your head that you can think of that you weren't necessarily super happy about?
It's not a huge gripe, given how good the rest of it is, but I did feel that not all levels were created evil.
Evil?
Even.
I mean, they are all created evil, I guess.
Freudian slip. Yep. Now, I think there were a couple that, when I was trying to think of my favourite ones, I was also thinking, God, that was a drag. And I don't necessarily think the clever gameplay is always enough to make up for it if you just personally don't gel with what the level's trying to do. So
there are a couple of like quite linear ones, aren't there?
There are
like, literally with the train.
Oh yeah,
about
that was
it.
Well, that one. But
that was very
that's like the one, isn't it? Like everyone kind of says that's a really awful finishing level.
Weak,
although to be fair, then I went back to it's all well and good people saying that, but have they played Chase the Express this year? Because if
fair point,
on the PlayStation 1 and you're giving that 2 out of 10, because actually the level's pretty fucking good. Or have they played Red Dead Revolver on a train recently? Because I tell you what, that level's pretty fucking good. So I get what they're saying there, but it felt completely out of kilter with the rest of it. But I guess it was them trying to have the cake and eat it with, we're now releasing Agent 47 with all the weapons.
Yeah, I was thinking as well, like there were just some specific normal levels that I just didn't enjoy as much. And I can't remember where it was even. I've wiped it from my memory, but there was one where it's sort of like almost like a sort of militia camp somewhere.
The Colorado one.
Yeah, again, that's
I don't know. There wasn't
well hated,
enough.
I think.
And I think maybe it's because I enjoyed it so much when it was doing that slightly more. You've got like the options to go a bit glam with it and do that sort of like slightly hyper real James Bond thing of like everyone's beautifully dressed and impossibly like skinny and rich, and you can be a bartender or a blackjack dealer, or you can also be like a really privileged guest in like the Dubai Tower and stuff like that.
Yeah, it definitely
that just felt
feels
like you were crawling through fields, and your best option was basically be a scarecrow.
Yeah,
I don't know. So I think
it's not as glamorous.
Yeah, it's a minor gripe because the level still had all the cool options, and you could be very, like clever and varied in how you approached it. But I think it showed a lot that actually that alone does not carry what makes the game great. It also has to have that layer on top of it of the sort of scenario and the scenery to sort of really lift it up for me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I remember being like stuck on like the house roof for a little while, just like with everybody looking for me, and I'm just there in broad daylight. And clearly, don't look up because I'm just fucking there, like
sun reflecting off your bald head.
Yeah, they couldn't see because it was just kind of gleaming everywhere. Fair enough. I had the same sort of things really. I spoke about the fun part of the AI and the silliness that you talked about with the jank with the sheaf, and kind of like, you literally just change your clothes and you can, and that's it, you're just out of there.
You're kind of gaming the system,
but at the same time, like, and you could just murder a whole room of people and kind of like everyone just kind of shrug and be like, oh, what happened there? Like,
that was that other bold guy in that slate.
Exactly. Yeah, it just, and I felt like sometimes the enemy AI could be a little bit over aggressive for like the smallest sort of thing that you might have done. Like you might just kind of like walk into an area for like a second or so, and they'd be like literally shooting your face off. You're like, whoa, dude, come on, it's all a misunderstanding.
Just looking for the lose, right for the lose.
I've not assassinated anyone yet. So yeah, I just think that could have been levelled a little bit better.
That's a good point as well, because it would be great if there were more situations like that where you felt like you could talk your way out of it.
Yeah, that's it. You don't ever really have that option. So it was interesting watching you play the Le Chiffre one. Where you kind of do dialogue stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, because the amount of times where they would just bang I guess what you call them, like, a general, where you have the person that will, regardless of whatever you're wearing, they will spot you and that you're not meant to be there. Like, as in, they would regularly put that at the bottom of the stairs that you need to get up to the next level. That's like the thing that they do, and it's like, which I understand that's what you have to do, but if they could just make that, that part of the interaction of the level a little bit more exciting and have something more to it, like, and a little bit of a different mechanic. That might be
like bluff your way in or bribe or something.
Yeah. Rather than just hit A to blend or whatever, blend in, and it's just like, okay. And I felt as well, and I don't know how recently you guys have played it and stuff, but certainly looking at Hitman 1 and 2, which have allegedly had a polish to come up to, to this generation of console, and then to see, and we were speaking about, you talk about Oblivion last level. Jesus, it is late. Last podcast, and saying how beautiful the water looks now in the Unreal Engine, and when I look at Hitman 2, the first level on that, where it's kind of like a bit more of like a tutorial level again, is it the New Zealand level, is it? I can't remember what it's called now, but it's on a beach in a beautiful house.
Yeah. And it's a sort of storm swept. Bloody house somewhere else.
Hawk Slinky. And you look at that, and then you just look out at the sea. You're like, this looks like fucking cellophane. Like, is it like? It's just like, and then just I'm not going to criticize the game for that necessarily, but it was almost like sometimes it could just, in the background detail, just look a bit off in the framing. And the last thing kind of had noticed as well was, I think it was on Hitman 2 again, where I had a couple of missions that just kind of like story missions that I was doing, and they just kind of failed halfway through. It was almost like it just couldn't remember. I think I was trying to put the mariachi band together at some point.
Well, I gave up on that because I found 2 of them, was like, I don't know where to put the rest of them.
I found them all, but it wouldn't let me collect them together into a trio. It's like they're all still going, no, fuck off. Like, I want to get drunk here. It just wouldn't let me. Nothing. I hadn't set off any alerts or anything at this point. Like, everything was as it should be, as normal around the village, and yet it just wouldn't let me progress that part of the story. And I was like, right, fuck it, I'm just gonna have to shoot someone in the head and go to the submarine then. It just became one of those, this isn't working for me, so I'm just gonna have to go and do my own thing, which in the end ended up being fun, but you could just see, like you said about really early on, where people kind of would get kicked off a server or something just isn't quite clicking in the background. But again, minor gripes, like you say, they're not like anything that was game breaking the whole time or anything. So
that does raise something though, doesn't it? Because those things that I was saying to you earlier were the fun exits. There's no way I was going to find those. And I question a lot the people who did. I mean, if that was you, let us know why you were stabbing all the crocodiles on the beach and you should have been assassinating. But there's things that you almost have to look up. And I don't know how I feel about that sometimes in games, because it used to be very much you sort of like you failed. If the game itself hasn't steered you towards something shiny and cool, and you've had to like go and look for it. Not that long ago, that would just be like, well, the game's fucked up. Whereas nowadays, it does seem like there's so many Easter eggy bits, and I can't help but think like maybe you and I missed the mariachi band because almost there was something, I don't know, did we not go into one particular cellar and pick up one particular bottle of something that would have made that guy go, actually, for that bottle I will rejoin my band, but you'd never have known. Were the bits we were missing.
I think for my tuppence worth with that is that, like, potentially, I think I generally found that it was quite good. That, like, if there was a specific thing like that, like, Diana would be on the blower being like, oh, you need to look for this or you need to seek that out. So I thought it was generally quite good at, like, at least for those sorts of things that weren't like full-blown Easter eggs. It was quite good at giving you breadcrumbs. But also, I would flip that, and I would say that surely it's kind of a good thing that you've ostensibly got into like a kind of fail state with that particular plan, but you haven't quit out.
No,
You've just
true.
gone, okay, well, time for plan B.
Yeah.
Off we go. We're going to shoot a guy in the head and go to the submarine. And
Well, that's it.
It is normally a more explosive option, isn't it?
yeah, but I think it's great that the game world is kind of inviting in that sense, that it's like, okay, well, plan A hasn't worked, off we go, and we'll just try something else rather than just restarting it. And I guess like quite a few of the levels are long enough that you've probably by this point invested a fair bit of time anyway, and I think it kind of lends itself to that, like you were saying about using the kind of save states to just go back a little bit and try something else rather than like a wholesale restart. I think that is a plus point for the design of how the better levels are put together.
Yeah. And the final thing we've already mentioned, so I don't have to go back over it again, but it's almost the story, and I just, that even the murky origin story and stuff, I don't give a fuck where Agent 47 came from. I don't, and I understand a hell of a lot more what you're saying about him being an iconic character now and things like that, but I still don't have much love for the character himself necessarily. Like, no. I just, you just want to be him and do the thing. I'm not fussed about.
Yeah, he's not a personable character. He is a convincing avatar.
Yes.
For this particular thing, and that's why I kind of like how the kind of, we'll call it a platform, has got to this stage now where it's kind of like post game, but like on a huge scale. Where like, okay, we're not even worrying about that story anymore. It's just going to be like the Le Chiffre kind of Bond tie-in and various escalation missions and things like that. We're going to do these like little self-contained little worlds rather than trying to do a big story. I think works to the whole franchise's strengths much better.
Have you played much of the freelance mode yet then, or did you?
Dabbled, and I am terrible at it.
Yeah, I'm not very good at it either. I thought it'd be better.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's great that they are still trying to find new spins on the formula. And I think it's a strength to how this thing has kind of grown and developed over time, that they can put something like that in now, and you've got that little bit more variety. But I don't think it's the main event.
Cool. Has anyone got any other further pressing points before I give it a score and then talk about our favourite levels? Or?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, cool. Right, should we try and give it let's try and give it a score at the same time and see if that coalesces into the exact same score that we can put on our spreadsheet, or it might fuck up.
Okay.
Nobody say 3 or 4 or 1. Okay, right. So 1, 2, 3, 9.
Oh, that was weird.
I knew it would work. Brilliant. That's awesome. Cool. That was not pre-rehearsed or anything. We're all
that was dumb luck.
All as amazed as each other. Yeah, I think that feels about right. So I kind of floated around an 8, and then I played more and more and more, and I was like, no, this is getting better and better. It's just what this game is brilliant at being is a video game. Do you know what I mean? It's just a fantasy that is played out. There's just a new story waiting to happen around every corner, and and that's great, and that just carries it so far. Whilst we've just talked about a couple of gripes and it's not perfect, the amount of content that is now there and the amount of fun that you can have is awesome. Do you want any further messages?
Any further announcements?
Jesus! Oh God, what's wrong with me? That is in on like Hitman in general, then, or anything at all? That is in that you haven't said anything.
No, but I'm kind of looking forward to the co-op thing that's kind of been.
Yeah, so you mentioned that, and I was like, but I didn't actually. It was more.
They've kind of floated the fact that they are working on a co-op mode, starring a couple of the characters that were in one of the sniper spin-off things once upon a time. So A, kind of cool they're bringing them back. B, fuck yeah, sign me up for a co-op mode on this game. Like, yeah.
Oh, cool, good, awesome. Levels then.
Right.
So I've got mine written down because I was just prepping myself, but that is in. Do you guys want to go first then? It doesn't matter if we have a good crossover or anything.
Were you doing it across the entire franchise?
Yeah,
or just
well, I think for you can do across the entire franchise.
Right, okay.
I mean, Fiona can have a go, but you've got no, so just as in. So yeah.
All right. So, for me, so I'll go for on Hitman 2. There was an early one where you are infiltrating a mansion owned by a mafioso who has kind of kidnapped the priest that you're kind of, I guess, living with. technically.
Excellent.
And yeah, like that, I replayed that mission a lot, but it is also like the one that has the track that I ended up buying the CD for and all that kind of stuff, and was like, oh damn, Jasper Kidd does a great soundtrack. Next up would probably be the Opera House from Blood Money. I hope I've got that right. It's very late. But yeah, that was again, early in the game, great example of like what this game is going to be like doing. This is how you can approach it in all these different ways, and it's just got this one way of approaching it where you can like replace a replica firearm with a real one, and the guy gets shot on stage by a stooge and all that kind of stuff during a rehearsal. So it's like a kind of classic movie bait and switch type thing, but it was sort of the first time I'd really seen something like that in a game, and also have that moment of like, I had a plan, the plan paid off, and it was really cool to see.
Great.
And then I think for me the third one would probably be again the Paris mission from Hitman 1 / World of Assassination. Because again, I mean, they're all basically first levels once you're out of tutorials. And it's exactly the same reasons again. It's just showing you what this particular installment is going to be about. And they are probably the missions that I've replayed the most various times. Because, I mean, certainly for the earlier ones like Hitman 2 and especially, you would have various levels later on that are more like levels rather than like missions. They're not necessarily open. You're a bit more railroaded, a bit more linear, all that kind of stuff, whereas it was a bit more open and freeform here. And again, like that showstopper mission in Hitman 1, and it looked great as well, and still looks great. No matter what kind of window dressing they put on it. The Christmas version in particular, like it always just looks great. So yeah, looks great. And then, you know, you can go in and you can pretend to be like a great male model and strut on the catwalk and all that. Hashtag Hotman. And the game will just be like, yes, you do look suspiciously like this really, really famous model. Of course you do.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah.
And of course 47 knows how to approach a catwalk.
Why have you got a barcode in your head?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like no one questions it. So yeah, I think those would probably be my picks.
Awesome, cool. Thanks for the spread as well. That's really good to have the retrospective all the way back to those ones. Fiona?
Oh, I was going to Paris as well.
Yep, cool.
It's great, and I also really enjoyed that. Oh, you happen to look exactly like this famous model bit, just because it showed how actually, although the game is pretending to be very, very serious, it is very, very unserious at its core. I tossed it between like Sapienza and Hokkaido, but I think Hokkaido pips it. I love the setting. It's very beautiful, very cinematic. There's some very sort of like James Bondy things about people having their like heads wrapped and identities changed. I think you can boot a yoga teacher off a cliff or something. That's that one. Good fun. And also it's a bit of a wild card because I'm not sure it's like a peak Hitman level, but I really enjoyed the Dartmoor one. Where it's a murder mystery just because it was so different.
The setup for that is incredible, isn't it?
It's great. You can literally go in and be the person who solves the murder that you haven't committed, and then you're there to do a second murder. Or you can just wander around and see how this, very unhappy family hates each other, and in this spooky gothic house in Dartmoor, which again, a place that doesn't often maybe Sherlock Holmes things, but it's not the peak thing you expect to see in a big shiny glossy video game, so it's nice to see a bit of representation.
It's such a cool setup. I blasted through that way too quick. I suddenly found myself in a really good position to do the hit, and I was like, oh shit, I've kind of done this way too quick. I don't think this should have happened.
Savoured the location.
I don't think this should have happened as quickly as it has done. So Hokkaido is on one of mine, so that, again, it was really, I felt like I was constantly under duress and suffocating, and I remember the second hit I was trying to perform on that was not the main hit, if you will, but one where you're kind of tailing someone around the actual area itself, and that just broke down into, I found myself in their room. There's like 3 guards in here. everyone's getting stabbed with scissors. It's just, you know, and then they're all dead, and you're just like, I'm just gonna walk out of here now. I've panicked my way through this one after like trying to make the story mission and do the right thing for so long, and then in the end just going, God, I just need to fucking do the thing. But yeah, it's really an oppressive sort of atmosphere, but like you say, really high tech James Bondy kind of sort of. Is it Spectre? Maybe the film where there's the big sort of lair on the top of the hill that goes kaboom, you know, that kind of thing. The Alistair Gale, I think is that how you say it? That's the last level on the second Hitman.
Is that the one with the cult kind of?
Yeah, the kind of cult, and where you kind of.
I did quite like that one.
Yeah, because of the the point you made before about it being opulent and decadent, and that is like the height of the elite. You know, the creme de the creme, and you were there, and you were just fucking sticking to them, and you know, and you get to burn one of them, you know, just like alive.
There were some really gruesome moments in that one, weren't there?
Yeah. And it's just that was just, you were feeling very much like, I'd like to do this in real life, maybe. And then Berlin was in at number 1 for me. That's the one where basically it's kind of like everything's breaking down around Agent 47, and he's got to go and rescue a partner, and basically it's like there's a massive warehouse where a rave's going on, and it's like, right, you know, you've got to go and basically you kind of have to take out the 5 operatives that are looking after you, and there's no real clues in that one necessarily. It's just you kind of got to work your way out of where they are, and then when they appear, almost like the environment then appears around them, what you can do to them with the environment, really. So, you know, I remember sort of, you know, one of the operatives get you here and talk on the radio, and it's like, oh, that's one, you know, that's obviously one of them, you know, looking for you, and then you see something hanging from a crane, you're like, aha. I know what I'm going to do. I could have easily just jumped out the bushes and killed him, but I was like, no, you're going to the fucking crane. So yeah, I just thought that was like absolutely incredible. Just to have, that was the evolution of the game for me. That is to the point where I could start doing these hits without needing the story missions to necessarily lead me to doing that. I was starting to get confident around it, and to see it develop into that, you go, oh yeah, that's you know, fucking awesome. So yeah, definitely worth it. 9 out of 10. And that was really fun. So nice. Cool. Thanks for sharing all your stories and memories around that. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed that too.
Cheers.
Awesome. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.